Welcome. Do you know what a paradox is? A paradox is, well, it's like a kind of a puzzle. Something that doesn't make sense. It's like a statement that contradicts itself in some way. And you can say that a paradox is, well, it's something that's true, or at least it appears to be true. And yet it seems to be false at the same time. And sometimes a paradox can be a fun thing to think about, to dwell on, and to just turn over and over inside your mind, to just play with it, and twist it around and try to break it open, try to follow the logic through until we reach that point of contradiction in our minds, leaning in to the confusion of it, the dissonance. And sometimes it can be kind of like an itch that you can't quite scratch, or like a chord in a song that never quite resolves, or a painting hanging on the wall that you just can't seem to get perfectly straight. But sometimes that kind of frustration can be enjoyable in a way, fun to sit with for a little while, to relish the tension of it. And there's a famous paradox by an ancient Greek philosopher called Zeno. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you all about Zeno's paradox. And I'm going to let you think about it and dwell on it. And you can see if you're able to resolve that tension that it creates in your thoughts, or if it's something that just plays on your mind and stays in that frustrating space of dissonance. And Zeno's paradox goes like this. Just imagine that you're about to go for a walk somewhere you need to get to. Perhaps it's somewhere important. And it's not very far. It's not a very long walk that you have to take. In fact, it's just down the road from you. Just in a straight line. You don't even have to turn any corners at all. So you set out from your starting point and you head towards your destination. And you know that somewhere between your starting point and your destination, there's a halfway point, isn't there? There's a point that's exactly half the distance between where you started and where you're trying to get to. And after a while, will you reach that halfway point? And so now there's only half the distance left to travel than what there was when you started. And if you think about the distance that's left now between this halfway point and where your destination is, well, there's another halfway point, isn't there? Right in the middle of the distance that you've got left to travel. And if you keep walking towards where you're going, well, after a while, you'll reach that new halfway point, won't you? And then, of course, the new halfway point, well, it's 3/4 of the total distance you need to travel. All the way towards your destination. And so then, from this new halfway point, if If you think again about the distance that's left, well, then there'll be another halfway point you need to pass, won't there? And that'll be 7/8 of the total distance you need to walk. And from that point, there'll be another halfway point that's 15/16 of the total distance, and then another halfway point, and another, and another. And you can just keep going, can't you? And keep going, and keep going. The funny thing is, you can always just keep halving that distance that's left between you and your destination, on and on and on, forever and ever. I mean, there's an infinite number of halfway points that you need to pass, isn't there? Before you can reach that final destination that you need to get to. Isn't that strange? I wonder, how can you possibly ever reach your destination? That point that was only a short walk away from you. If there's an infinite number of distances that you need to travel first in order to get there. And so, this Zeno's paradox, this strange, contradictory, dissonance-creating deduction, seems to tell us that whenever we set out to travel some finite distance, we can never quite get to the end. And instead we get lost in this infinite whirl of ever-decreasing half-distances over and over again, always getting closer and closer to our destination, but never quite getting there. And I wonder if we could think about this in terms of hypnosis. And suppose there's some point of depth that you're hoping to reach. And just imagine the deepest possible point you could ever get to in trance. Just such a deep, empty, mindless state when I put you into trance now. And if you think about the distance between here, where you are right now, and that deep, lovely place of trance, well, it's not really that far, is it? I mean, it's just a matter of sinking all the way down, straight down, as you listen to the sound of my voice. That's right. But between where you are now and that deep place of trance, well, there's a halfway point you need to reach first, isn't there? And once you reach that halfway point, well, then, if you imagine again the distance between where you are and that final deep place of trance that you need to get to, there's another halfway point in between those two places that you need to reach first. And it's 3/4 of the total distance. And once you reach that point, then there's another halfway point you need to reach. And another. And another. And as you keep halving the distance every time, you might begin to find that you're just always going deeper. You never quite get to that deepest point, do you? You can always go deeper. There's just an infinite number of deeper places to sink down to. That's right. Deeper and deeper and deeper. Very good. And we could think about this a different way too, couldn't we? And let's say you're just starting out, listening to a hypnosis file of some sort. Or maybe you're actually in a hypnosis session with someone in person, someone that you trust. And just imagine that you're just about to be hypnotized by that person. And you're just about to reach that point of first going into trance. And well, there's a first point of depth that you'll reach, isn't there? As you begin to take that journey down from wakefulness into trance. But to get to that first point of depth, well, there has to be a halfway point on the way, doesn't it? So that means that that first point wasn't really the first point at all, was it? Because there's a halfway point that came before it. And so maybe that halfway point was the first point of depth instead. But then there has to be a halfway point on the way to reach that halfway point as well, doesn't there? And so we keep generating these contradictions, don't we? Contradictions that tell us that it must be impossible for you to move downwards into trance at all. And this is what Zeno's paradox tells us, that all motion is an illusion. Because to get anywhere at all, you have to travel through an infinite number of points first. So it can't be possible for you to move from awakeness into trance. And yet you're somehow already in trance, aren't you? You've already dropped down deep for me, that's right. But if all motion is an illusion, then maybe you were always here the whole time. Maybe you started out deep in trance, right at the beginning of this file. And, well, maybe it was only ever an illusion that you were even awake in the first place. That's right. You've always been deep in trance for me, haven't you? Always been down here where it's nice and deep. Always been mindless and empty for me. Always been completely, utterly hypnotized. And you can let go of all those contradictions now. That's right. Just let the dissonance of that paradox dissolve, right along with all the rest of your thoughts, because it doesn't matter now. Now that you know your mind is nice and empty for me. Now that you remember how good it is to be in this deep, mindless trance state. And you can come back here easily, anytime you like. Back to this place where all the contradictions and all the paradoxes make perfect sense now, don't they? Because anything you want to be true can be true down here. And all the things that are impossible become possible. That's right. And in just a moment, I'm going to wake you up again. And you can awake easily and comfortably, just retaining that lovely sense of satisfaction and relaxation from this trance, knowing that everything makes sense now, as I count you back up. Getting ready to wake up now on the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and wake. Welcome back. How deep into trance did you go? Or did you really go anywhere at all?